Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to another Hair Socials. We are live from Alfie Pfeffer's house. Thank you for having us again.
Hi, how's it going?
All good. I'm
Thanks.
just going to wait 10 seconds or so while I just check the stream is going live, and we're all good because yesterday I had a bit of a nightmare. But we won't bore everybody with that. Oh yeah, everyone's tuning in. You're live. I can see it's all good. So yeah, over to you,
Woo,
Alfie.
clapping. Amazing. Oh, brilliant. Okay. Well, hi everyone, and thank you for tuning in and coming to see what is now it's going to be my second live tutorial with Hair Socials. So yeah, I'd like to just say thanks again to Simon for allowing me to have this kind of opportunity to kind of showcase what I do and what I'm about. And if you don't know me, I'll just give you a little brief introduction into who I am. So my name's Alfie. I will have met some of you or seen some of you 2 weeks ago when I did my first live tutorial. I think it's grown by about 4,000 members since then, which is quite incredible. So that is not only a massive accolade for Simon for organising it, but I think what that really showcases is the ambition in our industry. It's really shown that even during this really, really stressful time, us hairdressers, us creative hairdressers just want to keep on learning. And I think we all need a little bit of inspiration. So these videos and these tutorials by these amazing hair artists have come at just the right time. So I'm going to be showcasing some colour for you today. Colour is what I'm hugely, hugely passionate about. And I've educated colour for a large high street salon chain for about 6 years. Recently, I went self-employed to become a freelance educator, so I can give out education, in-salon education to salons as well for other kind of colour brands. And as well as that, kind of get a chance to really enjoy hairdressing again. I'm really loving being in the salon, or I was really loving being in the salon. So my last tutorial was all about creating Brighton balayage beachy look. So that's where I'm based, in Brighton. And generally the kind of vibe here is easygoing, natural looking hair. So my first tutorial was a baby light and balayage technique, which actually starts me off on my next tutorial, as I'll be using the same tuition head. I'm having to be really resourceful here. So using the same tuition head, so the blonde that you currently see within that tuition head will be the blonde that I did last time. So if you want to recap on that, or if you didn't get a chance to see that, please have a look at my last video. But until then, well, let's crack on with what we're going to do. Simon, shall I just carry on? Yeah, brilliant. Okay. Well, so like I said, it's going to be a colour focused tutorial today. Something that I'm really, really passionate about, like I said, is a natural look. But I really, really love getting creative and a little bit thoughtful with the way that colour is done. So what that actually gives me the chance to do is be creative, have a lot of fun. And that means that generally I quite like pushing the boundaries when it comes to colour choice. Even in a salon situation, I actually really quite like just being a little bit more creative with the formulas that I use, the sections that I take, so that each colour that I create tries to be a little bit bespoke for that individual client. So another thing that I really like to work with is kind of pushing colour formulas. So maybe using a bit more interesting colour formulas to create something that is a little bit more different for each client. So I'm going to be working with a pastel themed tutorial for you today. The reason why I chose to do this is because pastel hair colour trends always come back around during the summer months. And usually by now, we've had quite a bit of sun, so I could probably guarantee that a few more people would normally be coming to the salon, maybe asking for a lilac or a rose gold. And that is such a fun thing to create for a hairdresser, because to create vivid colour on a client is just a really visual, fun thing for us to do. But I actually find that some hairdressers love it, some hairdressers don't necessarily love it, and some hairdressers really don't have a clue and maybe are a little bit frightened about how to use these different formulas and how to kind of encourage it on the client. So I'm working with I've actually sectioned off my tuition head for you already to get you a little bit of a head start in terms of what I've done. Okay, so I'm going to break it down. I'm working with 3 different main thought processes when it comes to my pastel hair. So the first thought process will be the definition. Okay, so the definition means that it will be the effect that I create with my colour. The second thought process will be dimension, and within dimension would generally mean the sections that I'm taking to create dimension within the hair. And the third thought process to kind of push pastel hair trends further is tone, as that's probably the most important. But to start us off, we're working with dimension, okay? So I've decided to break my tuition head up into different sections to give you an idea of what it's all about. But the idea between this colour that I'm going to showcase for you today is to create a colour that has shadow, that has light, and has a multi-tonal effect to the hair. It's still going to be a very, very blended, almost, worn in natural look to the pastel tone. Okay, so what this means generally is it kind of involves a little bit more thought behind it. Rather than just doing one pastel toner at the backwash, it's going to be a creation of a few different sectioning patterns cleverly placed to organise the colour in the right way. So I've started off by creating a central offset parting line that goes from the slight left of my tuition head's forehead, going all the way down to the nape at the back. Okay, from then we've got a radial section that then goes from the crown area to the top of the ear on each side. And what that then gives you is your, traditional kind of 4-quadrant sectioning. From there, I've created a diamond section within that 4 quadrants. Okay, so as it stands, we've got 4 sections with a diamond section positioned towards the middle of the head. From there, what I've then left out is 4 sections underneath, or I'm basically halving each quadrant, okay, which then leaves these 4 little sections hanging down. So hopefully that makes sense to you. It's quite a bit of information there, but if you've got any questions so far about that, then fire away now.
Some of the people just commented straight away, look at them sections, perfection, which is basically what I echoed to you at the start of this video. It was unbelievable. I mean, I'm a cutter, and them sections are fantastic. Everyone's
Thank you very much.
Oh, they are so good. Everyone's coming in saying hi, Amy White. I presume she knows you. Says hi, Alfie.
She does know me. Hi, Amy.
Yeah, and the rest is a lot of people saying hello, hi guys, and just getting in. But you've, honest to God, one of the best introductions that I've seen. I was mesmerised by that. So well done, mate. Keep going.
Thank you. Well, I think with creative colour, it can get a bit conceptual, and I myself can probably ramble on a little bit about creative colour. And I feel like that's where sometimes some people, if I've been educating, they can switch off a little bit, because if it doesn't sound simple and easy to create or memorable, then we kind of switch off a bit. So I am probably going to go over things a few times just to make sure it really sinks in for people. But like I said, we started off with 4 sections, a diamond section at the top, okay, and then what that then has left out is these 4 little dangly bits down here. So I will keep referencing this sectioning pattern as I go on. I've actually already made a really good start on my colour and got sorry, one moment.
But yeah, that's a fantastic sort of introduction. I can't wait to see the explanation, especially behind the diamond one on top. I think everyone will be asking that question, but honestly, there's very little questions coming in, and that's testament to how well you've introduced it.
Oh, thank you. Good. That's what we want. Okay, so the first step towards this colour is obviously placing the sections within the hair so we get an idea of where they are and why we're using them. At the moment, you probably haven't got an idea as to why they're there, but I'm going to go through that now. Once we've got an idea of where our sections are going to be placed, we then place our overall root colour. As I find that generally most pastel tones look absolutely amazing when they have some kind of gradient effect to the colour. Okay, so this generally means a bit of a shadow placed at the root area. Okay, so my shadow colour has already been placed through the root area. I'm going to be using a combination of 4 different colour formulas throughout this whole head of hair. Okay, my deepest, darkest colour formula, like I said, has already just been placed through the root area. And I'm working with a brunette ash-based 7-level colour. Okay, and that's mixed with an 8-level pearl ash colour. So we kind of got a mix between a 7 and an 8, a really kind of nice cool finish. But what I want to do is create something that has a little bit of a shimmer of something a bit different to it. And I've mixed in really small amount of a 7-level red. Okay, so generally what this is going to create is a really muted kind of shimmery pink ash root color, if that makes sense. I kind of wanted to create something that kind of shimmers in the light, doesn't look overtly red, but kind of has a little bit of something about it. To talk through the colors that I'm using Paul Mitchell XG, and Paul Mitchell is an oxidative color that you can mix with different levels, and this one is mixed with 10 vol, so it's kind of like a semi-permanent quasi color. Okay, so my 7/8 level red kind of has been applied through the root area all over. I've then sectioned off the sections that I spoke to you about before. Okay, so we've got our diamond section placed in the middle. We've then got our 4 sections placed around the head. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then underneath here, those sections, you've then got those other sections that I spoke about. So they're split in half, like so. Hopefully this is clear. So we've got a cut across the section here, a cut across the section here, and those two are then left down. And I've then left some of the colour for me now to show for you, okay? So I'm going to crack on. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are just complimenting at the minute, but they're saying they're perfect, great combination, presuming that's all about your colour combination choice. And then a lot of people are tagging other people saying, watch this. So I really want to echo that while that's on the trend. If you can tag and share, because again, I echo this every night, but people are giving their time for free that would charge a lot of money for these time. And I'm extremely grateful. So yeah, let's share it, get everyone watching it. But any questions, get them fired over, because I can't wait to see what he does next.
Brilliant. Okay, so like I said, I'm going to carry on working on my 4 sections that I've got. So my 1, 2, 3, 4. The sections basically are placed in a way that allows a kind of under shadow to be coloured. Okay, so what I've essentially done is secured some of the hair away from the head and painted on my root colour that is actually blended down into a slightly lighter version of that root colour. So rather than having the 7 cool colour mixed with the 8 cool colour and the red, I've just got the 8 and the red mixed onto the ends of the hair. So we will have a really nice gradient feel to that already, which essentially will be a sort of pinky, flat, natural colour. Okay, the reason why I'm placing this underneath all the way around is because it's going to have a real element of shadow and dimension to the hair. A lot of the time when we are working with pastel colours, they are often coloured upon bleached hair, and we know that bleached hair sometimes can look a little bit unhealthy if it's not been done well, or if certain sort of aspects haven't been maintained throughout the colouring process. But generally what really helps in maintaining the health of a lightened look or a pastel look is the idea of dimension within the hair. Okay, so the idea of making it look thicker and fuller. So by placing that shadow colour underneath, I'm going to help enhance the depth of the hair and the shadow of the natural hairstyle. So I'm going to split that in half, like so. So we've got a section that goes off to the occipital bone, and I'm going to move that up out the way. So when working with a colour like this, you can see that obviously I've worked with a balayage technique on the end, which has given a really nice bright blonde. What we don't want to do is get loads of colour on the ends of the hair, because that will spell disaster and instantly our colour would be ruined, and well, we'd have to probably work at some kind of removal technique. So I always make sure I just use whatever I can to just preserve that hair. I'm then going to work with applying, like I said, that slightly lighter version of that root colour through to the ends of the hair.
Just while you're on the topic of colours and blending, we have a good question here from Nikki Lorimer. Do you prefer to use demi-permanent or pastel? Demi or permanent for pastels? Apologies.
Well, I think it really depends on the brand that you're using, because brands often have a mixture of demi and permanent pastel versions. Generally, you would probably be working on a pre-lightened base, so a demi would be more appropriate for what you're going to be using, i.e. it doesn't need the ammonia or the lifting agent to open the hair to allow the pigment to go in because it's already lightened. So I would generally say you would be working with a demi kind of colour, if that makes sense. Okay. So whenever I'm merging one colour into another, especially this root colour that's already been placed, I'm going to add a little bit more of my root colour onto the roots to give me something to work with. A lot of people will have seen people using their hands when they're working with blending, and that's what I'm going to do today. So to make sure I'm keeping as clean as possible, I make sure I've got a towel on me at all times to keep my hands as clean as possible, because your hands will be your best friend and your worst enemy in a colour like this. So I'm going to start by putting some of that root colour down into that existing colour, using my fingers and my comb at this point to remove any demarcation line that could already have been placed. And essentially what you're doing here is making sure that you're removing all of the excess colour from this area, so that when I come back through with my end colour, we don't get a merge, we don't mix of colours too much, okay? So we're more in control of how much the colours mix together. So I'm placing that on. Again, what I'm doing here is using the side of my brush rather than the flat of my brush. It will help create a blend. Even though I'm going to use my fingers to help create a blend, everything I do is basically incorporating more of a blended feeling. So I'm going to get in there now and start working that through on the ends of the hair. So this particular colour requires a lot of working through to make sure we get all the way through to the other side of the section, which is really, really important. Once I've worked that through on the ends of the hair, I'm going to dry my fingers and then bring some of that root colour down into that existing colour and really start to work that in. And even though you probably think that actually I've been quite vigorous with that, you'd think that that is quite mixed in together. If you kind of pull that apart, you can see there are actually dry areas within that. So you would want to make sure that you're applying enough product to make sure it's completely saturated all the way through to the other side of that section.
Do you have any fears of sort of the new brush meeting the root colour? You know, like with the way you're blending it in and you're going so close there to the root colour. I'm saying, like, do you get any fear of touching it? Is it all right to touch it? Is the root colour sort of like stay away from it?
So in this case, it's fine that they mix together because, like you said, they're so close together. I actually almost want to create the effect of almost three colours on the hair. You've got the root colour that's applied here, you've got the end colour, and then you've got this area of about 2 inches where they meet, which is a kind of colour in between. So it's allowing for that blend. In this case as well, you know, they're so close in terms of colour result that I'm not worried about the effect of what will happen when they blend together. If I was working with colours that had extreme levels of depth, you know, apart, then yeah, I might be a bit more cautious about the way that it's done. In this case, it's about applying, you know, enough on to get a really good merge between the two colours. But definitely always take caution in everything you're doing. But you can see here, you've got to really work it through to allow that blend to start to come through. And then I'm going to keep applying that over the top. At this stage, I would say this is probably this is like the simplest part of the colour application. In this case, it's about creating a good blend between the two colours and ensuring we've got good saturation. So another thing to touch on here is, like I said earlier, I'm working with a pre-lighting base. It's the baby lights and balayage technique that I used last time. And you'll notice that the colour itself, in terms of lift, is kind of variant throughout the head. And I feel like this is a really big fear for people when working with pastel colours or vivid tones, is that, you know, that variant of lift will give you a variant of tone when it washes off. In this case, we're kind of using that, you know, we're using what has happened to the hair, the way that it's lightened, the way that it may have faded out on our client. And we're using that to give us that really beautiful multitonal effect. So I'm just working through the last part of that little section there. And I add a little bit more of that root colour.
Yeah, Ryan Euler has said great tips. He often comments, so thank you for that. He said great tips, and again, a lot of people tagging people saying, watch this. Frizzy Head has said, I presume that's the salon, has said, so excited to see the final look.
Yes, well, I mean, right now it's probably quite difficult to visualise what it's going to look like. Ultimately, what we're trying to create here is a dimensional look to a pastel kind of finish. Okay, so we're going to add in these areas of darkness underneath to help give the illusion of more weight to the finish style, and then also give a really good shadow to the underneath of this haircut, as it's going to help make the overall look thicker and essentially make it look like a healthier, more dimensional version of a pastel colour. Okay, so that is done. I'm then going to secure that out the way from now. And then move on to my next section.
Lisa Harrington has just asked, what colour are you using on the first section, please?
Okay, so the two colours that I'm using at this moment are the root colour that's been applied. Okay, so I'm working with a brunette ash-based 7 with a pearl ash-based 8. Okay, so it's kind of a mix between a 7 and an 8 with a cool finish. And then mixing with it a 7R, which is in, like I said, which is in Paul Mitchell XG. And 7R is red-based 7. Okay, so it's got just a hint of red mixed in with a really cool finish. And then the next colour is essentially that same colour formula. So we've got the small amount of the R with the red mixed in with just the 8. So it's a slightly lighter version on the ends of the colour. What I might add now is I'm actually going to be giving away head sheets that you guys can see the correct formula and also be able to recreate this at a later date should you need to throughout this application. So I think that's really, really helpful for people to visualise, especially with creative colour, because it can get a bit complicated and you can get a bit lost. So I'm going to be giving you those head sheets and colour formulas once I've finished the actual application.
Because I'll give you an honest fact now, Alfie. Me and Alfie worked together in the RD team a few years ago, and I actually used your lab to recreate the balayage on my missus' hair, who hates having her hair done. But I said, listen, look, and I showed her your video.
From the last one?
On your last video, showed her your last video, showed her the head sheet, and then she let me do it. So, yeah, it turned out amazing.
Good. I'm really glad to hear that. Yeah, I actually had a really good response from that, where people sending me some of their finished results, and people really had loads of people requesting the head sheets. I think things like that really help people visualize, especially if it's something new. You know, I feel like people are only human. If they're seeing something new, it seems very complicated the first time you see it naturally. So it's only right, really, to support that with anything else that you can do to help those people kind of get to grips with trying it again. So the head sheets, like I said, I'm going to be giving away. As well as that, I'm going to be giving away a bit more of an in-depth formula kind of write-up as well, with more details on the technical aspects to the colours that I'm using. And if you go to my Instagram, that's where you'll be able to see it. So it's Alfie Hair. You'll be able to see some new shots of the finished look tomorrow morning as well, when we get some really, really good lighting.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, because honestly, it even helped on a client basis. Like I said, I showed it my missus and she was like, go on then, I'll trust you. Whereas if I'd have said, let me try this new technique, she'd have been like, no chance. But Nicky Lorimer has asked a good question. I like this one. Are you doing this on dry hair because the product line says so, or because you prefer to do it on dry hair?
Well, so you could. I'm doing this on dry hair because I want to create a really rich, even colour from root to tip. That's not to say you can't create a toning kind of process on towel dried hair. In fact, it might be slightly easier to blend on towel dried hair. But because I'm working with an oxidative colour at the root and blending that down underneath, I want to make sure that I'm getting as much richness from that colour as possible as well. I mean, we know that tuition heads can be a little bit temperamental, so anything that I can do to create as much kind of true colour as possible, I will do. But blending techniques, toning techniques work really, really well on towel dried hair. But what you've got to remember is that generally it can dilute the product slightly, and give you a bit of a false sense of security onto the blend that you're creating, because I find that actually you work a little bit harder to create a blend on dry hair, which means generally you're going to be happier with the outcome. Okay, so I'm coming to the end of my underneath sections, which, like I said, are there really to help create a shadow to my finished colour. Blending up that slightly lighter red toned neutral shade into my slightly deeper version of that colour into the roots.
Somebody has asked, actually, I've lost the comment, sorry, but somebody has asked, how much red did you put in the 7R?
Okay, so the actual colour formulations that I've got, we've got 20 grams of 7 brunette ash, which is, like I said, in Paul Mitchell XG. And we've got 20 grams of the 8 PA, which is pearl ash. And then I've only used 5 grams of the 7R within it. So it's a really, really small amount. It's almost like a pea-sized amount within, like, you know, a big bowl of colour, which makes you think, is that going to have any effect? But it really does. And remember, the effect that I'm really trying to create here is something that looks very, very delicate. And it's almost like a pinky sand colour, okay? Okay, so I'm going to move on from that now. Again, section this out of the way. I'm going to place that over the top and put another one there. Wonderful. I think it's really important when you're working with a bit more of a conceptual colour to be as tidy as you can. So you'll notice I'm being really particular about keeping my hands clean, but then also using foil where I can to preserve the, you know, the rest of the hair that I'm working with. Okay, so let's get to the fun part. What we have now is our 4 sections. We've got our shadowed colour underneath, which is our root colour blended into a slightly lighter version of that colour. And what that's left is 4 kind of rectangular sized sections above, and then a diamond section within this middle part. So I'm going to be working with a really cool blending technique, because the idea behind this is to create a multi-tonal effect that has kind of like a shimmery, almost marbled effect to the way that the colours are placed. What I want to do is really talk through my process of thinking about tone, as that is really, really important when it comes to pastel colours. I find that when we've got this really, really big boom of, when we got this big boom of direct colour coming out, maybe like 5 years ago, a lot of colour brands decided they were going to bring it out so people could create beautiful pastel tones without having to mix lots of colours together. And I think that was great initially, because what that did was give us the opportunity to not have to think too much in the back room when we were mixing up. But what that has given us, I feel like, is a bit of a basic look to the way that these colours are looking. And I feel like moving forward into the next year and the year after that, we need to be more a little bit more inventive with the way that we mix our colours up. So for me, that is about creating a cooler, more muted, almost more dusty finish to the way that these pastel colours show. So all of the colours that I'm showcasing today are designed to have a vividness to them, but with a slightly dusty, almost washed out effect to them, okay, which I feel like gives a really good modern feel. Okay, so let's get going. The colours that I'm using, it really kind of, when you start mixing colours like this, it's really important to know the rules so you can break the rules. I'm not a massive rule breaker when it comes to colour, but when it comes to this kind of colour application, it's important to know why we're doing what we're doing. Okay, so the first colour that I'm going to be using is a coral. And you'll notice that within this bowl, I've got a really small amount of blue. Okay, so sounds weird, but essentially what that is going to be doing is neutralising that coral shade. So we're creating by mixing a really small amount of the appropriate opposite shade on the colour wheel into your desired colour, really helps mutify that colour and bring it down and take that sort of harsh, vividness away from it and creates a bit more of a powdery finish to the colour. So you'll see that my coral that I've got in the bowl here, I mix it so you can see, get right in there, and we mix it together. You can see that. So small, it's basically about a pea-sized, let's say a gram within that colour. So instantly we can see that that orangey coral shade has been turned into something that looks way more muted. It's still vibrant, but it's got a bit more of a softer kind of effect to it, which I feel like gives almost a more metallic, flat, ashy look to the colour, which is a way for us to move that colour forward and turn it into something that is a bit more trend-based, as a bit more editorial looking. Okay? So the next colour that I'm going to be doing is a pale pink colour, which doesn't look pale pink in the bowl, but the overall finished result is kind of like a a bright pale pink colour. I'm mixing in a really small amount of green, as obviously we've got to think about when we're doing this, what is the base kind of tone to the overall colour that we're doing. In this sense, pink is obviously red diluted, so its neutralising shade is green. So I'm going to mix in a really small amount of mint green into that colour. When we see that mixing together, it helps take away some of that vibrancy and gives it a more muted, powdery finish. Okay, so they are the two main direct colours that I'm going to be using in my colour application. And I'm going to be working them together to create a really beautiful blended result. Okay, so I'm going to get cracking. I'm sure some people have got questions about that, so fire away.
Brilliant. What time in that way? It's like you read my mind then. Tracy Dunbar said, do you look at the eye colour of the overall client before and in the consultation?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, if anyone's worked with me before, they'll know that I bang on about consultations a lot. Okay, so my old salon team, I would say I was really happy, I was really proud of my salon team that I worked with before, because something that we always did was take extra special care with the consultations that we did. So looking at everything from eye colour to natural hair depth to body language to the clothes that the people are wearing, they all help create an image of what that person is and give you a bit of an idea into what they would want. But also it gives you a way it helps you communicate with that person, so you can maybe alter your body language and the way that you talk and describe colour to them in a way that they will receive better. So that's really important when it comes to working with colours like this, because colours like this require a bit of a brave kind of mentality, and not all clients have that. So for me, I love creating colours like this, but let's be honest, our bread and butter is probably highlights and blending and balayage. So people generally want that kind of colour, I would say, more, unless they know what is on offer. So if you want to, suggest a more vivid tone to your client, you've got to look at the way that they are and the way that they act, so you can maybe suggest it in a way that kind of makes it seem a bit more appealing. This kind of colour technique this kind of colour formula technique is actually really good because it's quite enticing for people that haven't tried pastel tones before, because it's quite delicate. Right, before I carry on, I'm going to start applying a little bit more of my root colour, okay? So that is my base 6/7 cool shade onto the roots, like so. The reason why I'm doing this is because some of that colour may have already started to set a little bit, so I want to make sure that I'm able to have something to work with. So I've added a little bit more, not coming beyond that demarcation line that's already started to appear. And what I'm going to do now is start using my fingers. Okay, so again, make sure that they're really, really clean. I'm going to use a little bit of my comb to make sure there's no knots running through first, and then just start to blend that through. Using your fingers is quite scary, I feel like, if you've not done it before, or if you feel like you're a bit of a messy hairdresser. So one thing I always say, you've got to have quite a fluid kind of motion to the way that you do it. When you're using your fingers, what I would generally do is, rather than kind of use your fingers and stop at that point of which you would like to stop, you kind of open out as you go. So you pull it through and open out. So you're creating a blend as you work down, and you don't create another line down here, because it's all about creating a smooth finish and removing any demarcation line that could have started to appear. So the next stage that I'm going to do is work with an element of over direction. So we talk about over direction loads in cutting, and if you're a cutter, you will talk about it all the time, and you will use it quite a lot within the cutting application. And actually it means exactly the same thing when you work with over direction in colour, because essentially when you over direct something in cutting, you over direct it over to remove weight from the line that is cut. Okay, so you're moving it off of its natural fall so that you place your weight, or you place your cut or your colour, so that when it moves back to its natural fall, that weight or cut or colour is then distributed, and it helps create more of a blended look. Okay, so I'm going to be over directing this section to the front of the client's face, so that when the colour is applied in a straight line, when it comes back down, we get to see a nice gradient effect start to appear. Does that make sense? There you go.
You've got a few people complimenting your tips, by the way. I'll just dive in on that one before you crack on, sorry. But some people saying great idea to write on the bowl instead of on a spatula. Someone has put one of, say, great tip, usually use clear mix, but this sounds like a more bespoke way of doing it, which I agree with.
Well, yeah, clear mix is great, but generally that will take the depth away from the colour. So that's great if you want to create that. In this way, in this sense, I actually want to keep the depth. In fact, I want to create, like I said, quite a muted effect to the colour. So just making it lighter probably wouldn't achieve that. I need to kind of make it dustier, so it's still got the depth and the vividness of the colour without all the vibrancy, if that makes sense. But, you know, clear's a really good tool for us to use. Okay, so I'm going to go start working in with my first shade. So that is my coral with my slight dot of pale blue. And you can see even on the brush, although it's kind of vivid, it's got a really nice matte finish, which again is, if you are a girl, you might wear makeup. Generally, a makeup trend at the moment is kind of matte finishes to things, rather than like high shine. So that, I feel like that even looks like a bit of lipstick there. Right, let's get going. So, although I'm going to be using my fingers to blend, I want to start by creating or ensuring that I don't create a harsh line in the hair. So I'm actually blending with the side of my brush again. I'm applying this just before that root colour. So I'm not merging these two colours together yet, but I'm bringing that down over the top of the hair. And you can see already it kind of looks blended. You can't see any harsh lines. But I know that when this is developed, you would still see quite a lot of separation there. So I want to start to merge these two colours together slightly. Okay, so I'm going to use the back of my finger to merge that in and create a really good blend between where those two colours are. So obviously the root colour may not have fully deposited yet. You will see the blend kind of come through as that colour deposits. Now I've removed some of the excess onto this area. I'm going to dry my fingers and then bring some of that root colour down over the top of that existing colour.
No question. I've got a question for you.
Yeah.
What sort of like, how brave are you there? Because I can see it again, and it's a common thing. If you can't tell, mate, I'm a bit scared of doing this because this is the second time I've asked about being brave. But how much are you blending that in with your fingers, and to what point of the hair?
Well, I think the more you do it, the braver you get. You know, any creative colorist will kind of feel quite sure about themselves the more they do something. But essentially, you keep going until you can't see where one color starts and the other one ends. Okay, you want to see it seamlessly blend from one to the other. And even now, that could be kidding me, because that could be saying to me that looks blended. But you pull that apart, you can see slightly sort of uncolored hairs within that, and that's because I've not used my fingers enough. So at this point, I quite like to just use my fingers and pinch that colour through to make sure I'm completely happy with the saturation, because that is what is going to give us a really beautiful even tone, is saturation. And that's probably the biggest mistake that people make, is thinking, even in balayage, that by using less product you create more of a blend. But all that does is kind of not do much at all. Okay, use lots of product, so on the areas that you want it, and then blend to remove excess, like so. And so there you've got my first colour there blended into the root colour. My next colour is going to be my pale pink mixed in with a small amount of that mint green. So one thing I'm really sure about is making sure that I haven't got loads of product on the brush. Although at this stage, I want to make sure that I'm using lots of product. I'm going to take some of that away because it's going to create a messy effect, and then I can see a nice clean brush. It also means you can be a bit more artistic and a bit more direct and a bit more precise with the colour if it's just a small amount on the end of the brush. And again, I'm going to go in to my previous colour just below where the demarcation line is and blend that through. So already it looks slightly blended, but I'm still going to use my fingers to create a blend there. So essentially, what's really important here is making sure that we're using colours that sit within the same family overall, so that we don't create an odd, mixture between the two colours at where those two colours meet, so that kind of blend through harmoniously. But also, again, that we're using enough product and making sure that they're really, really blended at where those two colours meet. So using my finger there to blend, I'm going to use my two fingers to squeeze together to blend as well. But you notice what I'm doing here is not blending it all the way to the end, because I want to create one colour here, and there'll be another colour where those two colours meet. So now that I'm happy with that, I'm then going to start taking that pink colour all the way through to the ends of the hair.
Yeah, on that, mate, really good tips these. Someone's saying a few questions coming in, but I'll just read out a couple of the compliments before we do. Loving all these tips, the bleeding tips, sectioning formulas. I can't wait to use these formulas to create a dusted look. So that's a massive compliment.
Thank you.
do you always start off with a darker route, or does it depend on the colours that you are using?
Generally, you start off with a darker route because the idea is to create depth within the hair. It helps create an almost more rooty look. Even on a pink or a blue, somehow manages to look more natural when it's got like a deeper root area. So yes, I would generally use a darker or deeper colour, one that usually corresponds with the colour that you're doing as well. So what I mentioned earlier was a way to make creative colour, pastel colours look more healthier is to create dimension within the hair. So if I was to carry on doing the same colour technique throughout all of this top section, we'd get quite a blocky effect to the hair, which actually blocky colour tends to look, or blocky light colour should I say, tends to look a bit drier. It tends to look a bit textureless. So I want to create texture by adding a deeper effect running through the hair, as well as my creative colour. So in simple terms, essentially I'm going to be taking another slice above the section that I've just taken there, and I'm going to be using that same colour that I did underneath through to the ends of the hair. So working with that root colour, bringing that down, or giving myself a little bit of something to work down. And then using my slightly lighter version throughout the mid-lengths and ends.
Caroline Matthews says, to get a root smudge, would you always full head bleach first?
No, definitely not. You don't need to. In fact, a lot of the time, I mean, it's unrealistic to say that we need to do a really good, a good full head lightening, but to get a root smudge effect, because clients don't have that. There'll be the odd amount of clients that might have that within your salon, but the majority of salons will have some kind of multi-tonal blonding technique already on their head. And I actually find a really good root shadow works on something that already has a shimmer of kind of different tones within it. So a balayage or highlighted effect works probably better than a full head lightening, but pastel tones obviously can look different depending on the level of lightness that you have achieved from that lightening. So you can see here that I've got a balayage effect that was done with foils and balayage, and the level that I've achieved is a 9. It's not a 10 or it's not an 11. So what that tells me is there are certain colours that I won't see the vibrancy that I need. So what you would want to do is make sure that you are lifting up to your desired undercoat to make sure that you're being clever about what is realistic within the colour that you're applying. So I'm working with quite warm shades within this overall colour. So it's actually working well with the kind of warmer lift that I've got. And in some cases, a little bit of gold underneath a pastel or vivid tone helps give it even more vibrancy. So I would generally say, look at the desired result and assess the undercoat that you need to achieve before going ahead and doing it. Okay, so I kind of moved that section out the way. The next section that I'm going to take is another slice directly on top of that, and this is coming down onto the front hairline. I'm going to move that back again, using my foil there to create a bit of separation. So what I want to do again is mimic that first technique that I've got within this area. But I don't want to then do exactly the same colour, because what it will do is create quite a lot of, of that pinker tone towards the ends of the hair. And we'll get quite a similar look throughout the whole head. And I want to create something that looks quite multitonal and quite marbled in its effect. So I'm going to swap the order at which these two colours sit, okay? So the first section will be my pink, and then that will then go into my peachy rose gold shade, okay? So they're kind of they're going to alternate as they work up the head, which will give a really good multitonal effect. And you won't almost be able to place, well, or you won't be able to sort of see how the colour's been placed, which again gives quite a cool finish to the look. So again, I'm moving this right forward onto the face to get that over direction there. I'm on the side that you can't see, which is a bit unfortunate, but maybe I'll use a bit more like that. Can you see that? Yeah. Right, so again, we're going to move that forward, apply a little bit more of my root colour. So essentially I'm over-directing, but trying to create a straight line here. So all of the colour comes to the same point.
Huge fan of this over-directing here. We have actually got someone asking for a tip here. Stephen Shaw has said he's stopped doing as much darkening with an artificial root, as he has had problems with excessive warmth when the balayage needs redoing. Have you got any tips?
Oh. Yeah, definitely. I think that is a really good point, because that's basically what a lot of hairdressers have to do, have to tackle. And I would say the best cut technique that you can do, that you can be 100% assured is going to give you the result that you want, is classic foils. So it is going back to those techniques that we learned when we first started doing hairdressing, because foils will give you a really good definite result. It will give you the definition, it will give you the lift that you need. And you can see from my last video that even with foils and highlights, you can create a balayage look really, really well, and often it can be better. So I would say that foils placed in a way that doesn't directly go straight into the root area. For example, you could blend your pre-lightener into the midsection of the hair and use your brush to blend that up into the root, rather than start directly from the root and then place your foil in. Okay, so it's almost like foiled pieces of small balayage, but the foil is going to give you the lift you need. Is that good? Does that make sense? Cool. So now I'm going to work with my corally shade. Bring that up. I just love doing colours like this, because as a colourist, it's so visual. With direct colours, you can see what you're doing, you can see where it's placed, and it just feels artistic, and it feels like, it's fun, really.
Well, I'm not going to lie, you make me want to pick up colour more, and it's not something I do in my salon, because I've got staff that's like doing it more than me, so I let them do it. But honestly, you make me want to go and get my colours out of my shed and have a go.
That genuinely means so much to me. I've always said that when I've been teaching before, teaching for me really genuinely comes full circle. Every time I teach, I get so much more out of it as well. And just by seeing somebody or inspiring somebody learning, that is essentially why we do it. And I always try to learn at the same time as anyone that I'm teaching, whether that's down to learning how to be extra encouraging to certain people, or learning how to learn, different teaching styles, as everyone kind of receives education in a completely different way. So, yeah, that means a lot. Thanks.
No, you're welcome. Well, you are part of my salon homework. I have given each stylist a homework module, and you are one of my stylists. Say, watch this, recreate this. That you are the last video. Your homework.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
well, there's going to be more to come.
Amazing. Laura Griffin from the IDT says, "Go on, my boy."
Hi, Laura.
Holly
Laura
Trickett.
was.
Go on, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, Laura was at one point my partner in crime for about 4 years, and we got through to L'Oreal Colour Trophy Grand Final twice together.
Wow.
So, hi, Laura. Thank you for watching.
She's expecting a baby, I think, as well, isn't she, soon?
Yeah, she is. Yeah.
Yeah, congratulations, Laura. Holly Trickett, who's a good friend of mine personally, said great points. Going back to what you've been saying, Jackie Lyons has said such a good point again. I think that's going back to the foiling patterns.
So I was really interested. I feel like now we're hopefully coming towards the end of quarantine, you know, and at the beginning, actually a really good friend of mine and ex-colleague, Shivi, put up a really interesting post a couple of weeks ago about dealing with quarantine as a hairdresser and the different kind of levels that you go through as a hairdresser in quarantine. And one of them was acceptance, and that is accepting kind of that we're here. And the next one was about growing from it and planning for the next stage. And that's something that I'm feeling really passionate about. And I feel like I've come out the other side of where I was. And initially, I was probably a little bit down about it as well, like a lot of other hairdressers. But what I have found has really helped with, my mental state is planning for what is going to happen next and trying to really take from this opportunity to kind of grow. But as well as that, kind of planning of what's going to happen, because it is going to be different for everyone. I'm sure you've spoken about it a lot with other hairdressers that you've been interviewing. But for me, what's really, really helped is, although we can't definitely organise a diary because dates aren't necessarily set in stone, what we can do is organise a kind of movable schedule. So I've organised a guest list or waiting list for my clients, so they're able to kind of feel a little bit more secure and a little bit more confident that they're going to get their hair done. So I've got I've got my first 6 weeks already planned in a diary. I've asked people for their ideal date and time, and said that the actual date and time will be confirmed when we know more. But like I said, what that's given them is knowing that they're kind of at the top of the list and knowing that they've got someone looking out for them. Because we're feeling uncertain, we know they're feeling uncertain, and just saying don't do your hair at home, I don't think is enough to make them feel good about themselves. In fact, I think it's a little bit unfair. I'm not saying that they should do their hair at home, but I feel like we can be helping more and guiding more and just giving a bit more of a helping hand rather than just saying don't do it. Because actually, I think it's just, like I said, a little bit unfair to kind of just give them no options. So that, like I said, is giving them a bit of security. And as well as that, I'm offering face-to-face or FaceTime consultations for new clients and for old clients as well that want to know about, how their hair's changed and what they might want to do next. And that's really, really helped. I've got another one tomorrow of a new client of mine that's been recommended from knowing that I'm going to be giving that service. So I'm quite excited to meet her. I think things that are really, really important there are obviously great lighting, as we know how much that changes colour, but also a really good connection, obviously. So you'd want to make sure those two things are definitely in place before you do your FaceTime consultation. Yeah, that's a really good thing. Another thing that I've been planning is my next stages of education that I'm going to be delivering. I've really enjoyed doing these videos. I'm going to start my own YouTube channel, taking after you, Simon. Probably, it's going to take me a bit of time to get to where you've got. But as well as that, I'm planning more in-salon education dates as well for when we're over. So, I'm just keeping myself busy. Sure, like a lot of other people. I mean, if anyone else has got some good ideas of what they've been doing, I think this is a really good opportunity to share so that everyone can kind of get involved with how they can feel good about the next step. So feel free to comment away and maybe give me some extra ideas that I've missed.
No, mate, you're definitely on the list of people that I'd love to come to my salon to further their education. Who are your biggest inspirations in the hair industry? You mentioned Shivi earlier. She's an amazing hairdresser. But Ryan Euler's asked, who's your biggest inspirations?
So biggest inspirations, I mean, I absolutely, like I said, adore a passionate colorist. And there are so many within the industry to look at. You've got colorists that are all about balayage, and I think that's really important. I really actually quite enjoy Jack Howard's videos. I think he's obviously covering all bases when it comes to balayage. And he's someone that's like really pioneered the idea of a balayage tutorial, so I quite enjoy watching him. In terms of creative colour, I mean, there's like just so many to choose from, really. I'm kind of always looking at Instagram and kind of looking for inspiration. My mind's gone blank, I'm not going to lie. What's that? Oh yeah, actually, so sorry, my boyfriend's just sitting off to the side again, and he's just stuck his hand up like, what about me? He's the colour educator for Paul Mitchell, so he's like, hang on, I'm really good. And there's probably a lot of people watching that be like, yeah, he's amazing, because he is amazing. Okay. So, apart from him, yeah.
Jackie Lyons has said she's decorating her salon at the minute, but would love Alfie to come and teach.
Okay, good idea. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. Anything that you can do to maintain, you know, or anything you can do to update your salon, because I think things are going to be different for our clients when they come back. People, I don't think they're going to be expecting the same salon environment. They might want to maybe sit a bit further away from people, or we might have to be extra precautious when it comes to PPE. I actually loved that before this came about. I don't know about you other hairdressers, but I thought I was the only one that knew what PPE was from like college days or from, you know, education, and now everyone's talking about PPE. It's like, hang on, like nobody knew what that was apart from hairdressers before.
Yeah. They're all talking about it here. They're basically saying they're all about wearing masks and having to get changed in between clients in the room.
Yeah.
And then
I think we've got to be prepared for a bit of change, definitely.
Absolutely. Well, Jackie Lyons, who did say, I don't know, you must not have heard me, but she said she's redecorating a salon, but once it's done, she would love you to come round and educate, is what she said.
I would absolutely love that. I mean, like, Jackie, please have a look at my Instagram. I did put up a post the other day about that, so feel free to DM me on Instagram or Facebook Messenger, and I'll be in contact with an education brochure for you to look at.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I've put your Instagram on the chat for everybody to see. It's further up. I'll retype it again in a minute. Somebody's asked, who is your boyfriend?
He's called James Davies. He is Jad85 on Instagram. He's a regional colour educator for Paul Mitchell and works for Salon Success, so educating all of the brands that come under the Salon Success umbrella, like Olaplex, Paul Mitchell, My Identity. So he's got loads of stuff under his collar. Sounds weird. Oh God, I'm embarrassed now. Right, so we're cracking on with our next stage. So we are still moving on with the same technique. We're adding a little bit of root to there to give myself something to work with. Using the back of my finger to blend. And using my towel to clean my fingers at every opportunity. So, like I actually mentioned this last time in my video, that one of the best things about kind of going self-employed is getting the chance to look at other products. And I know that actually there's a really large Matrix community on here, there's a large L'Oreal community, but the biggest thing that I've absolutely loved about it is the mix of colour brands that you see coming together. I think for the first time, have we not seen so many colour brands learn from each other? And that is really, really positive, because I feel that's how it should be. We should all learn from each other. And although the formulas and the mixing might be different, the technique is there, and the inspiration is there. So that's been my biggest kind of love, is working with different colour brands, really.
I think the reason I started this group and invited the people I've invited is because I've echoed this before again, but it's basically, I know how good you are, I know how good Connor is, who was on the other day, because I've worked with you guys, and I thought, do you know what, just because the stage hasn't been given to me, you and Connor yet, it doesn't mean that we're not up there with our game, and I want people to see everybody is there's so many talented hairdressers there that haven't been given the stage yet, and I just wanted to provide a stage.
Yeah, and you've definitely done that. I said to you the other day that I think the best thing about that is it is showcasing young talent within the industry, people that may not have done this kind of thing before, people that may not have even taught before, but it's giving them confidence. And I think learning from people that are like-minded, maybe the same age, or people that have a similar amount of background or similar kind of amount of experience is actually sometimes a bit kind of, I don't know, I feel like you learn from people that are like you a little bit. So that might have even helped some people in terms of receiving the education and taking it in a bit. But I mean, there's a real mix as well. I mean, on the group, there's all ages, all colour brands, all levels of experience. And you put up that poll the other day that was really interesting to see all the different levels of experience.
I was massively shocked by that. I expected a complete turnaround. I'm not going to lie to you. The amount of salon owners and independent hairdressers, I did not expect.
Do you know what? Independent hairdressers are, you know, they're the kind of hairdressers that really kind of benefit from stuff like this, because they might not receive loads and loads of education for free, and they might not, you know, get the opportunity to learn from people other than people that are directly in that salon. So I think, you know, this is a really great opportunity for them to learn and get something new as well. Look out for the little guys, you know. Okay, so merge those two colours together. The next section I'm going to take is then going to be my kind of shadowing colour, which is again my root colour slice. Then taking through with a slightly lighter version. Might do a little time. Carry on.
Hurry up.
Again, we're placing this, you know, deeper slice within all of my creative colour applications to help give more dimension, to help give more broken up effects to the colour, which in turn helps to create more texture within the colour as well. You've got to really work at removing that demarcation line that started to appear and blend that down. I'm not too worried about what's going to happen when these two colours mix together. In fact, I'm using that colour effect because I know that when this direct colour mixes with that root colour, it will create more of a slightly cooler, more dusty effect. Okay, what I'm really searching for is that seamless blend between the colours. It helps keep it looking expensive and it helps keeping it look modern. So I'm now carrying on with my end colour.
It's just worth pointing out while you do that end colour that this live will be on YouTube afterwards. So like the rest of them that we've been doing in this format, so it's a lot easier for people to find once they want to rewatch this back or recommend it to their friends. We also now have a podcast. Now this is only going to be a weekly thing, but thanks to Redmond Multimedia, which is my friend, he's basically made us a podcast, and every week we'll be doing special guests. So if you do listen to podcasts or you've thought about listening to podcasts, please give us a download and give us reviews. We've actually got a 1-star review already, mate. Not gonna lie.
Well done.
Yeah, we got 5 stars and we've got a 1-star. Someone's thrown a 1-star in there already.
Oh.
I think that's an error. I'm not having it.
It must be an error.
but yeah, if anyone who could give us a 5-star on there to bump us back up, that'd be appreciated. Thank you.
I'll get on it straight away. Okay, so next section again, we're moving on, working up towards that diamond section at the top. I'm going to add a little bit more of my root colour. So if we was doing this in the salon, I would expect this to take maybe about 45 minutes to an hour to apply. I've obviously talked quite a lot through this, which, you know, means that you kind of stop and you might take a bit of extra time doing it. But actually, the reality is it can take be really quick when you get used to the actual, you know, the mannerisms of applying the colour. And that's often like like a query when it comes to creative toning, is how long it's going to take and how much should I charge. Especially just saying this is a toner is obviously not appropriate. You generally charge for the time that you do. So to me, this is like a full head balayage application. You know, if you're talking about the importance of why you're doing it and the importance of the sections and the colour effect that you're going to create, people will want to pay for it. Okay, so the next section I'm going to do is going to alternate between my, which is currently the coral and the pink. I'm going to swap that round and now do the pink going into the coral.
Stephanie Merriweather has just said, how thick are you taking the sections, and do you charge by the hour for this colour? Is Tracy Dunbar?
So the sections that I'm taking, they would definitely depend. First, hi Steph. They would definitely depend on the density of the hair at the ends. You know, so the section that I take here would be dependent on how thick the hair is down the bottom. So if you've got something that's quite fine, like this effect, I would actually take the sections, you know, up to 1 centimetre. To ensure we get a really good blend, if they've got thicker hair, you would definitely work with a slightly finer application. Whatever you need to do to make sure you get a really good even saturation. Generally, a mid to fine section is going to help you create that. In terms of charging by the hour, I do feel like that is down to the individual salon and the individual that's doing it. Some people actually, you know, they might not run their column in the same way as another hairdressers. Some hairdressers I know run their columns in a very kind of regimented back-to-back way, which works for some people. They're really time efficient and they're about kind of, you know, getting people in when they can to optimize the time. And some people that work, they might work in salons where they have the opportunity to spread those clients out to spend maybe more time, or maybe not have anyone in that development time. I think that would dictate how much you would be charging. So generally, I would say charging by the hour. I don't personally love that kind of technique because I feel like people prefer a little bit more of an itemized feeling to the way that their hair is built. They like to see like why it is kind of built the way it is. So I prefer to break it down into services that you're doing, as that helps people kind of really visualize why they're paying what they're doing. But again, that's just my certain, you know, tactic or my style. I'm sure everyone will have a slightly different opinion.
Katie Fallon has said, how would this work on thicker, curlier hair?
So thicker, curlier hair, it can work really, really well because you're not going to have any. Well, it's obviously we know with thicker, curly hair, what you tend to do is lose definition with any. Size would have to be bigger. Your sections would have to be stronger. Generally, the contrast between the colours can be stronger as well. You can push that even further. So if I was doing this on thick, curly hair, definitely I would make the section slightly wider. But I'd also make sure that my darker section, you know, the section that's sitting in between, is prominent enough to really break up the colour, because that's what we look for with curly hair, is a broken up effect to really bring out the curl.
Laurie Massari, she just said that she's loving this because she lives up in the north of Scotland. Courses are almost always in Manchester or London, etc. So she's loving Hair Socials and yourself for educating.
Yeah. Like I said, it's given a massive opportunity to salons that might not necessarily always get education. So that is basically invaluable in my eyes. And I love that it's free as well. You know, it's a chance for me to get stuck in with doing some hair again, and it's a chance for people to watch hair. It's not saying that, you know, paid for education is coming to an end. I don't think. I think people will always need to know more, and they might need to know a little bit more in depth. I think this is a bit of a good introductory look into a creative colouring technique, and should you need to know more, you might go on another course about it.
The way I look at this is an online version of a what do you call it? Like a, what do you call that Pro Air Live and Salon International? What are they called?
Yeah, like industry event. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's actually it's an online event to showcase what you're about, and then people get to know you that wouldn't even know you before, and say, do you know what, I like him. I want to see more.
Yeah, I absolutely love those events, but do you know what? A lot of the time they tend to be very, well, that might be extreme, but they tend to be, I think, a little bit like elitist in the way that you'll get some really big names, and then you'll get hairdressers looking at them from, you know, like the stage, and they're really high up and you can't really see what they're doing. It's kind of them up there and you down there, and I feel like this is completely removing that. Everyone's on the same page, everyone's on the same level, and everyone is just learning from each other, and that's the way it should be. No egos, just sharing education. So, for example, another example of that would be Colour World. I feel like that's obviously come about in the past 5 years, and I've been lucky enough to showcase my work at each colour world that's been on, and even though it's been postponed, I am going to be there again this year doing some creative colour, so that's really, really exciting. So if you're there, please look out for me and I'll come say hi, and vice versa. So what time are we on now? Quarter past. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to be finishing off this last section on top. And then I'm going to be, although I've got one last section at the front to do here, and that is basically the same as all of the other sections I've done, I'm going to finish off with my final section on top, which will help you visualise the total finished colour, and then I'm going to proceed with doing the rest once that's done. So let's add a little bit more of that root colour. So just to recap on what I've done, I wanted to create a multi-tonal, super blended, creative pastel toned look. What I feel like a good way to move pastels forward into kind of the next era of creative colour is to work with a more powdery, soft, almost dusty effect to the pastel. So it's taking the vibrancy a little bit away and removing the kind of, I don't want to say it, but it's removing that kind of cheaper, too bright effect, and we're creating something that looks a little bit more editorial and a little bit more fashionable. So I've worked with using the corresponding neutralizing shade of my desired shade to neutralize and flatten the color to help create more of a muted version. I've then alternated a blending technique between each section to help create a really beautiful mix of tones. And the idea behind this is having minimal kind of definition to the gradient effect of the colours, but also be broken up with some of that root colour as well. The ultimate finished result will be, you know, like a powdery, soft, reddish, natural tone through the root area, blending into some marbled direct colour onto the ends of the hair. So if anyone's got any more questions about what I've done or why I've done it, please get in contact with me. I'll always respond, and I will respond this evening as well. So if you've got any questions that you'd like to put up now onto the actual feed, I'll make it my goal this evening to answer everyone's questions as much as I can. So before we finish, has anyone got any more questions about what my summary that I've done now, or just would they like me to go over anything else?
Ryan Euler, love watching Alfie's colour technique, learning a lot from this. He comments a lot, so that's a real compliment. These have been a great boost to everybody. Tracy Dunbar. I've been delighted to watch some awesome talent, creative stylists that work, honestly, not heard of before. But that's Jackie Lyons, and that's the beauty of what we were saying earlier, isn't it? And then someone said back in the set she's going to get a gin.
What's that?
She's gone to get a gin. She'll be back in a second.
Gone to get a gin. Oh, good girl. I've got a beer right beside me that I haven't actually touched because I've been too busy.
Yeah.
Okay. So the last section that I would be taking now, although I've got this section here and the section here left to do, it's the same as the previous two sections that I've done, will be my top section. Now this essentially will work as a bit of a veil for the rest of the colour. So we've worked with some creative kind of merging technique here. The rest of this colour is going to be shadowed by that same colour that sits underneath. Okay, so it's working with that gradient effect of the warm / cool root area blending into that slightly lighter version. So I'm going to carry on applying this colour when we switch off. So I don't know if we kind of want to leave it there. Is that? Yeah, I can carry on. Oh, brilliant. Okay, good. Wonderful. Yes. Okay. So as I do this top section, again, we want to be really, really cautious about our colour application that we've done. So I'm going to use foil to help protect the colour that I've worked on. And then proceed with applying the root colour and blend that down into that lighter colour onto the ends. So what I'm not going to show you on camera, unfortunately, because I've only got enough time to do a colour, is I'm going to be working with a slightly shorter haircut when I do this as well. I'm going to really strengthen up the baseline of the haircut and turn it into a really beautiful mid-length bob style that will really show off the colour. So you'll see a bit of a transformation.
Lisa Harrington has said, no, we've been waiting for this top section. The masterpiece has to carry on.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the masterpiece is actually what's hidden underneath, but definitely it's good to see a good visual on what the finished colour application should look like. And thank you for carrying on with me and giving me a little bit of extra time. My boyfriend does tell me that I do talk too much, so what are you saying now? Brilliant. So he's given me a little helping hand backstage as well. He's told me to just recap on the fact that I am going to be giving out some head sheets that will help people, again, visualise the colour effect that we've got going on. So you'll be able to, I'm going to upload them into the comments section. And then tomorrow morning, I'll give a really good detailed post on the finished colour result. I'll show you some really good close-ups of the kind of result that you should expect to receive from this colour, along with the colour formulas and some more in-depth technical information onto the colours that I've used. As a lot of people will probably be quite confused from knowing a different colour brand, it's good to really just finalise what I've done and why I've used the colours that I've used. So, last section of the diamond section on top. Wonderful. Okay, so just to recap on that, I've worked with a level 7 and 8 cool overall shades and mixed that in with a really small amount of red to help me achieve a slightly warmer, slightly reddish powdery finish to the natural shade that sits at the root. And I've also added a slightly lighter version of that through the ends of the hair on top here. Underneath, I've worked with two different direct colour formulas, a muted coral and a dusty pink, and those two help achieve this kind of finished result. You'll be able to really kind of see the visual on it once it's dry, but just to show you how it looks right now, is we can see that we've got them slightly separated and crisscrossed apart. We've got this kind of coral shade mixed in through here, blending into a more vivid pink, and that does swap round underneath as well. So I'm going to leave that to develop once I finish the overall application until my last section is developed and I'm happy with it. And then I'll rinse it off and cut, and I'll show you the finished product tomorrow. But thank you again for watching. I really, really appreciate you guys tuning in and seeing me on my second go. And thank you, Simon, for allowing me to have another good chin wag and show off what I'm really passionate about, and that is colour. So thank you, Simon. Really appreciate it.